and I welcome all of you to come and join me so we can be all a nice big family. I'm excited to talk to you today about phase 2 of video, Revolution Evolution. And I've spent quite a bit of time thinking about video over the past few years, both at Yahoo and at VO. Now, if we were to think about video, according to ComScore's State of Online Video, between 2006 and now, there's been a 600% increase in actual streams watched. The typical consumer now spends about 3 to 4 minutes on each clip, and they've gone from watching 89 clips in a given month to over 180. So I think everyone in this room recognizes the significant growth that we're all seeing. Now, when we first started this study, the first one in 2009, phase 1 was really about the revolution. And within that piece of work, we studied the who, what, where, when, and why of video and came up with what we called the 7 Ds. Video watching is deliberate. You go into the experience wanting to and knowing what you're going to watch. It's desktop-driven. The fact is, a third of the videos that are actually watched are shared videos. You discover them by watching related videos. There's a differentiation in actual clip type. 40% are more likely to watch a movie or a TV show with a friend or family. A significant proportion of short form is watched alone. You're usually dedicated to one site and one site alone. And this concept of debunking prime time. We found that prime time is all the time except drive time and dinner time. Now, if phase 1 was about the 7 Ds, phase 2 is really about the Cs. It's about the change in the consumption and the consumer, the curation through connection, and the evolution of the content collection. We went into the research wanting to know a few things. First of all, has there been change since 2009? And where are consumers actually watching and on what devices? We wanted to figure out whether the short form clip was still the predominant form being watched, and whether the professionalization and evolution of the short clip is actually creating a viable, sustaining cycle of engagement that will benefit both advertisers and consumers. We also wanted to look at the content itself and figure out what type of evolution is taking place there. And we're constantly trying to think about the consumer as a publisher of video to optimize that experience so that it benefits us in terms of engagement and you in terms of the advertising that you place there. Now, as a nerdy researcher, many of you are probably asking, how did we do it? For the rest of you, I'll go through this very quickly. We used something called last coincidental methodology, and we spoke to over 4,100 consumers of video. They watched in the last 24 hours. Now, by thinking about that last occasion, we were able to zero in on what they watched, what type of advertising they remember, and they were able to tell us things about that video watching experience that no one else could. Also, this methodology was actually developed in the 1930s for radio, redefined in the 60s for television, and we're using it today for video. This is the second time we're doing it, obviously, as the first study was done in 2009. So let's move into our very first section, which is all about the concept of consumption growth and the consumer. Now, John Tierney and Maggie Jackson, they write about this concept called the age of distraction. And on the left side is our media time in 2009, and on the right is 2011. Their theory is actually growing in popularity. We're doing a lot of things when it comes to our media time, and it's obviously overlapping. Now, most pundits would argue that this is in detriment to television. And as you can see here, that blue line, that's actually not true. The end result is we're doing a lot of things at the same time. Both Nielsen and Yahoo have been doing a lot of work around the 3 screens. In fact, in our study a couple months ago around convergence, 75% of the time when we're watching television, we're also multitasking. And as you and I know, we're usually on our mobile phone, our tablet, or our PC doing something else. And so that's actually contributed to that roughly 15% growth from 2011 to 2009. But a big piece of that increased internet time is obviously in video watching. There's been a 33% increase from 2009 among consumers who say they've actually watched an online video in the past 24 hours. And you've seen astounding growth in both full-length TV and full-length movies. Now, Sandvine Inc. basically did a bandwidth study just a little while ago and found that Netflix uses approximately 29.7% of bandwidth when they look at downstream activity, whereas they were only about 21% as early as October 2010. This begins to show you that a lot of companies are starting to get into this long-form game. That includes us at Yahoo in our original slate of programming, what YouTube is doing as they dabble in premium movies, and even Facebook in their foray of actually their Dark Knight first run only on Facebook. Now, despite this huge growth in long form, what's interesting is that the large majority of actual total clips watched continues to be short clips. 7 out of 10 clips watched are actually short clips. And the great thing about working at Yahoo is having the flexibility to learn new things and think about new devices. There's been a whole talk about the tablet revolution and mobile. When we think about where video is actually being watched, take a look at that proportion in 2011. Yes, there's been a drop in both PC and laptop, but 8 out of 10 clips are still watched on a PC or laptop. And there has been a 3 to 4x growth for the mobile and also a PC connected to a TV device watching. Now, the interesting thing is the USC Marshall Institute for Communications and Technology recently released a study of 5,000 households and found that of the 8% of households that currently own a tablet, they imagine and are projecting that 27% will actually own a tablet by 2012. Now, when we talk about that PC watching, it doesn't matter what kind of clip content we're talking about. Whether it's a movie or a full-length TV show, nearly 7 out of 10, and for short clips, it's almost 9 out of 10 are watched on the PC. This has ramifications for advertisers. As we plan for the future and the advertising formats we have for the future on the tablet and the mobile device, we need to think about the here and now as well, because most of that consumption on video still takes place on the PC. Now, this is that one slide I was talking to you about. The gray line is what we found in 2009. Prime time is all the time except drive time and sleepy time. Well, in 2011, it's that blue line right there. You see a marked increase between the hours of 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock. It's nearly 30 points. And that has quite a bit to do with the fact that, again, we're talking about new services that are popping up that have grown by nearly 200%. You'll also find that there's been a small decline in the business day. And as we move into our next section, you'll begin to figure out why. There's been a definite change in the consumer. Now, in my short stint doing research at Veo, which was a small video startup that didn't start off too well, I still love my experience there, the video user in 2009 was probably a bit like me. Maybe 10 to 15 years younger, though, and definitely 20 to 30 pounds lighter. Now, in 2011, this he user, is now more she. She has gotten a bit older and is a bit more mainstream. And as a result of that, the actual content type is actually changing as well. Now, again, back at Veo, we had some of the most engaged users that loved watching content that was more of the anime, fantasy, animation variety. Today, when we take a look at the 3 types of content, you begin to see a shifting and a mainstreamizing of that content. It's now about serial dramas and sitcoms as opposed to science fiction and animation. That mix is definitely changing for the consumer. And when we think about the video experience, one thing we need to think about is that it's something that consumers still happen upon as a cursory experience to their online lives. What I mean by that is 3 out of the 5 clips that consumers currently watch are actually adjacent to something that they've actually done, they were actually doing online in the first place. That has huge ramifications. Now, when we break it out by clip type, I don't think it surprises you that if I'm going to spend half an hour to 2 hours, I'm more likely to actually appointment view a long-form piece of content. But because the large majority of clips that are actually watched are short form, most of what gets watched is a part of just online daily life. and that's the short form. 70% say they went online to do something first, and the construct is that online life. For mobile, we actually were able to see that it's actually quite a bit different. It's actually split 50-50, and it makes a lot of sense. If I was at a bar waiting for my friend Lauren, I might pull out my iPhone and start watching video just to wait and pass the time. Or the other 50%, I'll be checking email, and I see a great clip, and I'll press on it to watch. Now, let's talk about the sharing platform and how it's impacting the video platform. Now, most of us in this room who's been in digital for a while, we cannot deny that the social and video platforms, they're on meteoric rises together. So you would imagine that there is a correlational effect. But they're not really interrelated, and that's actually counterintuitive. Now, as the video watcher in 2009, I just told you about this person. They're a bit more quirky. They're a bit more into fringe content. Their social influencer ways go out the door as we change the demographic of the user. So as a result, you'll begin to see that the way consumers are coming into video is actually changing as well. Now, what this represents is in 2009, 70% of clips were referred to by something else. We actually saw a drop in 2011. And when we take a look at those numbers in 2011, of the things that actually referred me to video outside of me going directly to a site, you see that 38% is on search or through a search on a portal. 26% is social. That 26% actually represents 6 billion clips watched of the 34 billion in a given month. That's huge. And 15% is driven by content that you might be reading. But what do I mean by that drop? Well, we asked consumers to tell us whether they actually shared the video that they just watched. And between 2011 and 2009, we actually saw a drop of roughly 9 points. Now, the important thing to notice is there's just a lot more video being watched today. So there are more streams that happen that occur because of social media, but just less sharers. And then when we break out what share actually means on the right side, it could be a word-of-mouth recommendation to a friend, but even take a look at the digital response. There's been a 4-point drop. And again, if you take a look at the proportion, 70% that is actually shared is short-form content. Now let's take a look at the sharer and see why that might be happening. Again, when we take a look at this sharer, they're getting significantly older. That's that yellow bar. So social media actually drops for this age, and I think it's consistent. Now, when we take a look at the digital channels that consumers use to share, there's Facebook and Twitter, which is really social networking. But there's also email and IM. And I know everybody in this room must be thinking, that 8% actually seems a bit low, doesn't it? But when we project out to the 6 billion clips that I was just talking about, that's roughly 500 million clips that actually get circulated in the system as a result of IM, and roughly 1.4 billion for email. Now, it's really important to think about these channels, because with email and IM, the implicit or implied relationship is much closer. If I'm going to share with my best friend Stefan, the propensity for him to watch is probably higher than if I post it on social media where I share the space with my 6th grade crush and my boss. And there are some very interesting sharing facts. For example, minorities are more likely to use social media and IM. 66% of IM sharers are actually guys. And 35+ watchers are significantly more likely to use emails. So for all those that actually work with marketers every day and talk about viral strategies, understanding who our target is will help us understand what channels to use to push out your viral video. And even by distribution channel, we're seeing a difference in actual clip content. 9 out of 10 clips shared on email is actually short form. Now, one of the many questions that we get asked quite a bit is, can you make or create something or help us create something that will go viral? And I know many of us tackle these questions on a daily basis because this whole concept of virality of video is a difficult one to tackle. But we're actually finding that there are two prongs of why consumers actually share. Obviously, the content itself, but the second has a lot to do with us and how we feel about ourselves. It's about the personal identification and the ego. But even by clip type, whether it's a short clip, a full-length TV, or a movie, consumers are actually sharing for different reasons. For short clips, it's really about it being funny, but also about caring. Sharing is caring. I want to add to my friends' lives when I share this clip. Whereas full-length television shows are shared because it's water cooler talk. And movies, they're just interesting. So as an advertiser, as you begin to align yourself to content that you want to go viral, how do you think about parsing out whether you make short clips more additive to that consumer sharing? Now, Corey Weiner, who basically works for the Jun Group, they're the group that's actually responsible for that Kobe video where he jumps over the Aston Martin. He talks about a really smart social sharing strategy, and he says it's based on three things. It's creative, placement, and distribution. And he says that the number one thing that advertisers need to think about is the fact that you need to think about entertainment first and advertising second. What we wanted to do is really figure out, well, of the short clips that consumers share, what kinds of clips do they share? What do they think about the professional value? And 6 out of 10 clips actually are clips that they feel are made by professionals. So they're much more likely to share professional type kind of clips. And when we asked them, well, what was it? We had a full list of nearly 50 things that they could actually share, netted up into this, and found that the large majority actually share things like music videos, movie trailers, technology videos, even ads and product reviews. And even when we think about the different demographics, we're finding that younger men have a higher propensity to actually share entertainment-related clips. While young viewers make up approximately 20% of all shared videos, they make up 33% of music shares. And men and women are actually just as likely to share about fashion, about lifestyle, things of that nature. And those that are a little bit older, we're more likely to share about news and trivia, 3 times more likely than the average consumer. So I think what's really important is we've just talked to you about how the change in the consumer and the consumption patterns are actually happening, and the curation through connection. The big question on our minds is, well, what about the collection of content? How is that evolving? And how do we start to think about bringing this content to life at scale and with quality? Now, recently, if you take a look at YouTube's press page, they say that over 13 million videos, hours of videos, were actually uploaded in 2010. Every minute, 35 hours of video is uploaded. In fact, yesterday on Media Post, they changed that number to 48. Everyone in this room, for every video we want to watch, there's probably about 500 that we don't want to watch. And so thinking about the quality of the content so that we have a scaled opportunity to engage with consumers we care about and want to sell to is really the next evolution of video. Now, what we wanted to do is we asked, again, the consumers to tell us to bucket the clips that they watched into, I thought it was made by a professional, versus it's made by someone like me, I think. And as you can see here, there's an interesting relationship between trust and professional content. But how does that actually help, and how does that actually impact the video watching experience? Well, on many fronts. First of all, the publisher actually benefits when they have professional content, obviously. The consumer is significantly more satisfied with the video watching. They're considerably more focused, and that focused attention, as we found in some of our other work, Advertising by Mindset, actually gets shifted and the advertising benefits. And on the right is something that we're calling video plus article, or really it's just video plus mixed media. And so today we've heard a lot of speakers talk about augmented reality, and throughout the course of this week, there's an opportunity in the here and now to already start to apply some of these learnings to things that already exist in the space. Now, granted, the large majority of videos that are watched are still watched in the video alone bucket. And it's a very important experience. But this new experience where there's video and article is now starting to come into play. It dominates up to 40% or nearly 40% of the video watching experience. And why is this important? Because the consumer actually goes into that experience a little bit differently. They're 2 times as likely to actually go into that experience wanting to satisfy a query for information. They're less likely to want to be entertained, and there's a small gap and rise in their advertising recall, but their propensity to think that this video is professional is actually quite a bit larger. And if you think about it, if someone is actually willing to sit there and write about a piece of content before you watch it, it's actually worth watching. It's human nature. And 57% of consumers expect and like watching this type of video. Like I said, both video experiences are important, and we broke it out by these 3 prongs: content, channel, and mindset. The kind of content that you would find in video alone is music, television-related content, humor. The channels you might actually find them on are Hulu, Netflix, and YouTube, and the mindset is geared towards entertainment. Whereas when we talk about videos and articles, it's really about news and sports. You usually find it on CNN, ESPN, and Yahoo, and it's geared towards more information seeking. And this is actually based on data, not just hypothesizing. Now, one of the big questions that we get asked quite a bit is, are we ready for the user to commit to serial short form that's professional? Now, back in 2008, 2009, when I was working with our head of sales at VIO, we would talk about how, hey, maybe if we give away and package the short form as free CPMs, we'll have the advertiser buy that long form content. Well, that's actually changing quite a bit. In fact, we're now seeing that the short form professional clip is coming into its own. We ask consumers 2 questions: whether they expected to watch this type of content more in the future, and whether they wanted it to be serial. And we find that 60% say that they will be doing so, and 56% are going to be considering it as part of a series. And they're coming through multiple distribution channels. This is a very important point because it speaks to the fact that online video watching is just a part of our online activities. It's adjacent to what we're already currently doing online. So we might go there directly, but we also might happen upon it when we go to these content portals like Yahoo, MSN, or AOL, and we cannot diminish the importance of social networks. Now, one of the great quotes that I read is from a gentleman named Ash Karbafusan. He was an executive at Ask Men and now a current leader at Watch Mojo. And he said that great content is king, but distribution is what commands dollars. So thinking about these scaled opportunities is what's going to be really important. So far we've learned about those 3 C's. I think what's critically important is the fact that we need to start thinking about what powers this free experience and challenge ourselves as publishers and marketers to up the game when it comes to the advertising experience. The fact is, there's a lot to be excited about if you're in video. eMarketer projects that we're going to go from $1.5 billion spent on video in 2010 to over $6 billion in 2014. But that's still a small fraction of the $70 billion spent on branding on television. So we want to make sure that we're optimizing this experience for the consumer. IAB also says that there's going to be a 22% increase in the next year among planners. Now, I want to actually go back and talk to you about how we did the study again, just to say that what we did is using last coincidental methodology, we were able to capture the content that was watched, but also talk to the consumer directly about their video experience and the ads that they actually saw. And we were actually quite explicit. And obviously, there's a lot of ad formats out there that we can actually use and engage the consumer. Now, the first question that we asked the consumer is, well, of those who remember advertising, What formats do you remember? And I don't think it surprises anybody that the pre, mid, and post-roll are number 1, and the banner ad is number 2. This has a lot to do with our spending patterns as much as it is to do with memory. And so what we'd like to challenge you guys with is the fact that obviously advertising is trying to achieve 3 things: drive awareness, drive some sort of behavior, or drive ROI. And we're finding that depending on the actual ad type, you start to see some very interesting things. Now, according to Break's online video media study, they spoke to planners and buyers about online video and found that online video buyers actually prefer pre, post, and mid-rolls at a 2-to-1 rate versus other formats. And their very reasons were, well, it's because you could hold the consumer hostage, and we feel like we'd get their undivided attention. This chart actually talks about the concept of, I wouldn't mind this kind of ad, and the ad was intrusive. And I think as you see here, there's a whole host of things that consumers are actually open to. That gray line is actually what's intrusive. And as you can see, there are a lot of things that are actually not that intrusive, including sponsorships, banners, pre-post rolls, expandable video banners. The intrusion that we're probably seeing is because it interrupts the actual content experiences. And so we need to take that into consideration and think about that even as a publisher. Also, it really depends on the kind of action that you want to drive. Is it about awareness? Is it to drive your consumer to do something, or actually influence a purchase? And depending on the actual ad units, you actually see consumers say, well, this one actually did influence me to want to actually make this purchase. You could see that for driving awareness, it's really about the pre, mid, and post roll, and even sponsorships. But as you move to the left side, that there's this engagement with the advertising. That self-selection actually creates a much better experience to drive action and to drive a purchase decision. Now, I refer back to Corey Wiener again from MediaPost. He talks about the fact that the pre, mid, and post roll is really about reach, but real reach doesn't actually equal real engagement. That the proverbial home run for video advertising is getting the consumer to actually engage with the ads, and that's actually more on the left side. When we bring back this whole concept of professionalism and content, we see that among those who watched a more professional clip, they have a higher propensity to remember branding. They thought advertising was less annoying, and they considered the advertising more relevant to them. And also, while the deltas are a bit small, they are still significant. When you go into the experience seeking information, you actually have much better ad recall and brand recall. Now, this chart really is just to showcase the fact that ComScore just released some numbers that 172 million people this month watched about 15 hours on average of video. We've come a long way, even since 2009, where every advertiser can generally speak to a purchase influencer in all of these categories. And this slide really just talks to the fact that it's obvious that specific content marries much better to specific kinds of advertising, which is the green. We asked consumers to stack rank based on a list of about 30. Which of the 5 do you think are the top 5? I don't think it's to anyone's surprise that if I'm watching a fashion clip like Michael Kors' New York show, I'll want to see something around beauty or fashion accessories. But what was interesting is look at entertainment-related clips. We see that there's an opportunity for fast food restaurants. Now, if we think about product optimization even today, I just saw a TV commercial where Subway was talking about their new launch of the avocado sandwich because of the green lantern. Now imagine the kind of digital partnerships that could happen as a result if we just take a lot of the lessons that we're already doing in an offline basis. We also get asked the question, should I repurpose the television ad that I have for the online space? And one of the interesting things that we actually found is that 1 out of 5 consumers actually really, truly, strongly dislike when that happens to them. And 84% actually say that they really don't like watching the same ad over and over again. It's really significant because in 2009, this very same percentage was 60%. So we've seen a 24-point gain. But there are new opportunities when it comes to video advertising. Now, many of you in this room probably say, it's very expensive to redo creative. It's more cost effective. Researchers in the room might say, it doesn't matter if they're irritated. We're driving ROI. Well, the reality is, are we ready to marginalize that 1/5 of consumers when they do become near-term intenders? What does it mean to the longevity of our brands? Also, the last thing is we could start to use video advertising as a hotbed for copy testing creatives that we didn't want to spend money doing research on, or doing different types of interstitials like banner ads that might be interesting and provide a different message for the consumer. So as I close today, the findings are really as follows. There's been marked growth in the video space. In fact, a 33% growth from 2009. There's been a great growth in full-length TV and video and also movies, but the large majority that's watched is actually short form. We're seeing more nighttime viewing between the hours of 6 and 9 o'clock, in fact, a 30-point increase. We talk about the fact that the sharing platform is not really correlated, or it might be correlated, but they're not interrelated. There might be more streams shared, but less sharers. We're finding that ad receptivity does increase with production value. So finding out how to get tied to this professional content actually will speak volumes and really help out marketers in a big way. The short form video is ready to be serialized. Consumers are ready to watch it, and they are actually looking for it. And lastly, this concept of augmenting video and videofying publishers' content, because video watching is really adjacent to what we're already doing in the online space. Now, the implications are simple. Online prime time. We're not sitting here talking about moving your TV budgets, but supplementing them. If all of this convergence is actually happening, can you imagine what an interesting media buy might look like that goes on when they're on TV watching The Bachelorette on the mobile device or on their laptop, and all at the same time they see the same ad for Ford? Happen upon your consumer. We just talked about the fact that of the clips that are being watched, the large majority are happened upon. They're cursory to the online experience already. Get shorty but professional. Viewers are already they're self-programming to this kind of content, and it's going to become a real reality very soon. And advertise on the right content, and you'll get a significant boost in all the metrics you're trying to push for your business. And lastly, social really is about short clips, but professional short clips. So thinking about how if you want your advertising, or you want advertising to be adjacent to clips that are actually shared, you have to start to think about scaled opportunities that are professional. Really, the evolution of video are of those 3 C's. The change in the consumer and the consumption patterns, the curation through connection, and the evolution of the content. Thank you very much.